Saint Eusebius of Vercelli. In a quiet corner of Sardinia, toward the end of the 3rd century, a child grew up in the shadow of loss and quiet hope. His father died young. His mother, carrying the weight of sorrow, left the island and brought him to Rome, a city where the Christian faith had just emerged from the shackles of persecution, only to face a new kind of battle, not with swords, but with doctrine. That boy was Eusebius. No one then could have imagined that this quiet child would one day become the first to bring the light of the gospel to the northern city of Vercelli, and that he would later accept exile rather than betray the truth. But grace never arrives with noise. It comes like a whisper in the soul, and Eusebius, in silence, answered. In 345, he was ordained the first bishop of the diocese of Vercelli, a land still tangled in remnants of paganism and theological confusion. What set this bishop apart wasn't fiery preaching or dazzling miracles. It was something far simpler. One day, he refused to sign his name. At the Council of Milan in 355, under pressure from Emperor Constantius II, the son of Constantine, the bishops were ordered to sign a document in support of the Arian heresy, a teaching that denied the divinity of Christ. Nearly all of them signed, out of fear, out of politics, out of convenience. But Eusebius, the bishop from the northern mountains, quietly set down his pen, said nothing, and walked out of the hall. That single act, silent but defiant, spoke louder than any speech, and for it he was exiled. What followed was a lonely, brutal journey. He was banished to Scythopolis, a foreign city in Palestine. There he was isolated, surveilled, and starved. Yet even in hunger, he wrote, he sent letters back to the faithful in Vercelli, urging them to stay firm in the faith, to persevere in prayer. Those letters, written from the edge of abandonment, became an invisible thread linking his distant diocese to the heart of divine life. Later transferred to Cappadocia and then to Thebaid in Egypt, he remained the same, silent, steadfast, never compromising. Not once did he complain. Not once did he surrender. His silence was not weakness. It was a kind of confession, an unspoken creed, that there are truths you don't trade even for your life. In 361, Emperor Constantius died. His successor, Julian, though a pagan, allowed exiled bishops to return. By then, Eusebius was old, his body frail, his steps slow, his hair turned white. But his eyes, they still held light. He returned to Vercelli in silence. No parades, no applause. Just a man returning home to teach again, to rebuild faith, to live out his final years as a keeper of the flame, unseen, perhaps, but unshaken. In 371, Eusebius died in Vercelli. No blood was shed, no sentence was passed, just a life poured out, quietly, completely, for the truth. Today, the Church calls him saint. But it also makes clear he is not, by canon law, a martyr. He did not die by fire or sword. Yet the long years of exile, the suffering endured in silence, and his unshakable fidelity transformed his life into a kind of unbloody martyrdom. He was a witness, not in death, but in unwavering love for the truth. According to Vatican News and the Martyrologium Romanum, Eusebius is remembered as a man who endured great hunger, hardship, and isolation for defending the Catholic faith. For this, he is honored as a faithful witness, even though he is not officially recognized as a martyr under canon law. Sources for verification: Vatican News, Saint of the Day, August 2nd, today. No one is forcing us to sign decrees that betray our beliefs. But the world still whispers its pressure. to conform, to stay quiet, to seek safety over integrity. In a time like ours, the witness of St. Eusebius is anything but outdated. It speaks softly, yet clearly. Truth doesn't need applause. It only needs someone who won't abandon it. St. Peter Julian Eymard. In a quiet village named Lamure, nestled near Grenoble in southern France, a child was born on February 4th, 1811, to a working-class family. His name was Peter Julian Eymard, though no one then could have imagined that this boy would one day devote his entire life to making the world see and adore the real presence of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist. From a young age, Peter helped his father in a small forge, crafting and repairing blades to support the family. While other boys played by the riverbanks, he was learning the rhythm of fire and iron, and slowly learning how to shape more than metal, how to shape purpose. But what truly set him apart were the quiet hours at dusk, when he taught himself to read Latin by candlelight and nurtured deep within a holy dream, to become a priest. By his 20s, he entered the major seminary in Grenoble. In 1834, after years of study and silent prayer, he was ordained. His first assignment was to care for 2 small rural parishes. The people saw in him not just a young priest, but a gift from God, simple, generous, and deeply compassionate. Still, something within him remained unsettled, a quiet yearning that whispered through every Mass. In 1839, he asked to join the Society of Mary, the Marist Fathers, a young congregation founded by Father Jean-Claude Colin. There, he served as spiritual director and, by 1845, had become superior of the community in Lyon. Yet even then, he could not explain why his heart burned every time he was near the Blessed Sacrament. His love for the Eucharist wasn't a fleeting devotion. It was a consuming call. During a Corpus Christi procession, he had a spiritual experience that marked him for life. As he carried the Blessed Sacrament through the streets, he felt Christ's presence not as theology, but as fire, a radiant warmth that enveloped him in light and love. That day, he realized what he had to do: to live a life wholly devoted to the Eucharist and to invite others into that same adoration. In 1856, after years of discernment and with the blessing of his bishop, Father Eymard founded the Congregation of the Blessed Sacrament in Paris, a religious order committed to perpetual Eucharistic worship and evangelization. 2 years later, in 1858, he and Sister Marguerite Guillot co-founded the Servants of the Blessed Sacrament, a contemplative order of women devoted entirely to Eucharistic adoration. He had not only created a congregation, but a path, a spirituality where every moment could become an offering, and the soul itself could become a living tabernacle. Father Eymard spent his days forming laypeople, catechizing children, preparing them for First Communion, and writing meditative works on the Eucharist, texts born not of intellect alone, but from hours spent kneeling before the altar. His words, steeped in prayer, are still studied in seminaries and religious houses around the world. The final years of his life were marked by illness, misunderstanding, and criticism from those who couldn't comprehend his singular focus. But he never defended himself, never complained. Instead, he withdrew ever deeper into silent worship. He continued to kneel before the tabernacle, praying for those who would not kneel, loving for those who did not love, believing for those who had stopped believing. He was like a candle that burned itself quietly to the end, leaving no sound, only light. On August 1st, 1868, Father Eymard passed away in his hometown of Lamure at the age of 57. But the love he poured into the Eucharist did not pass with him. It lived on in the priests and sisters who carried on his mission, and in every lay person who, thanks to him, learned how to adore Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament with both awe and tenderness. On December 9, 1962, amid the proceedings of the Second Vatican Council, Pope John XXIII canonized Peter Julian Eymard, a saint of the Universal Church. He was not only recognized as the founder of a religious congregation, but as a heart that had burned its entire life for the mystery of the Eucharist. Conclusion. Saint Eusebius of Vercelli and Saint Peter Julian Eymard became saints by walking two very different paths. But as Saint Ignatius once said, "Whatever leads to the greater glory of God, that is the path worth walking." Saint Eusebius glorified God by enduring humiliation and exile for the sake of truth. He never compromised with heresy, never abandoned the Church, and remained steadfast through suffering, proclaiming his unwavering loyalty to Christ not with words, but with the silent witness of fidelity. He followed Christ to the very end, not with a martyr's crown of blood, but with the quiet martyrdom of constancy. Saint Peter Julian Eymard, on the other hand, glorified God through burning love, by devoting his entire life to the Eucharist and founding communities of perpetual adoration. Through them, he offered the worship of countless hearts in place of a world too distracted to kneel. His holiness was not loud or militant, but gentle, radiant, and Eucharistic. Each of us has a path to sanctity. The question is not whether we should imitate their steps, but whether we are truly walking the road God invites us to take. So what about you? What is your path to holiness? How are you living your life to glorify God? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this story meaningful, don't forget to subscribe. Let's continue walking together through the stories of saints who light our way.